Yes, we are good to go.
Okay, all right. So this is the grand finale of our mini-verse of store conversions on steroids, and we had such a blast over this last. Today's the 9th day, and a ton of learning. Week 1, it was a lot about review mining and qualitative, and how do you persuade folks to actually get down the funnel, the shopping funnel in your store. And week 2 started out with John. We did a bunch of discussions around what is the perfect size of a test. Like, is a big test really right for you? Is redesign right for you? Right. So all these, I would say, decisions that people have to take to actually implement CRO, and how to take those decisions better. So a really lovely end to this entire set of learning that we've had, because today we're gonna bring all of that together into a conversation around, even though you've spent 8 days learning about CRO, what are those misconceptions that we all have and you might still have when you're thinking about, as a brand, you can't run away from it. As any business, you can't run away from it. So how do you avoid the trappings of misconceptions and actually implement CRO in the right way for your store and your business, right? And for that, we have AJ. We also have a super amazing fun thing at the end of the conversation. We'll get there. We'll stay tuned for it. The Easter egg that's coming up. But a quick introduction of AJ. We'll hand over the mic to her. AJ, what do you do? Why is it important for e-commerce teams?
Yeah, I'm really passionate about that moment of getting visitors to become customers. I think there's so much that goes into that moment from a psychological perspective. We get tons of data in that moment. And so what we love to do is balance the qualitative inputs to build a really smart A/B testing roadmap. So we do conversion strategy and testing, and we make sure that we layer in the right qualitative data across that whole process to improve conversion rates.
Yeah. Awesome. And it's a balance between qualitative and quantitative, and making sure that your store is set up right for increasing conversion rates. But even though there's so much of knowledge out there about CRO, and there are great experts like you who are kind of like doing your best to coach the industry on the fundamentals, there's still a ton of misconceptions on what does it really mean for me. And I think one of the biggest thing that I keep hearing is that the changing button colors. I think that's like the number one. Would that be the number one misconception about CRO?
Oh, that you hit it right on the head on the nail. It's people come and they think about CRO, and the first thing they think about is blue button versus red button. And so I love to tell people that if that's the test you're running, you don't know what problem you're solving, and you're not likely to make an impact. So I think over and over, because a lot of the tools that enable us to do A/B testing do very simple demonstrations of what an A/B test is, there's a misconception of how small CRO needs to be, when in fact, that test should go much beyond just color choice.
Yeah, totally. And beyond color choices, right? Like, what are these, in your experience, the kind of like the fundamental misconceptions that folks have around the best practices that they need to follow to run a successful CRO, experiment on their staff?
I think another misconception I often see is this, one philosophy is test everything. And I do believe that testing everything can give you lots of learnings, but it can also be time consuming. It may not have ROI to be able to test each and everything. So for example, if you're changing your footer, is that going to matter to your customer or not? Does that impact whether they convert or not? Maybe, maybe not. If you're Amazon and you have tons and tons of traffic and you've got an army of people doing testing, then sure, test everything. But I think that one of the things that I want people to take away is you should test the important things, and you shouldn't test the things that are going to solve real problems for your customers. Because if your customer is struggling to figure out something, that's like the first need they have is, can I find the information? Can I move through the site? And if we aren't achieving those basic usability problems, then we shouldn't be testing anything else until we've solved all of those.
Yeah. And as you were saying that, something popped in my mind. Yesterday, Ryan was talking about how CRO is not like a one-time set and forget about it kind of a thing, right? It's iterative in nature. It takes time and effort to actually get to a certain level of optimization, and to continue to get there, be there or grow, you have to keep implementing more experiments in your store. But is there any misconception that you see regarding like the amount of time it takes for results to show, or maybe the number of tests I need to run continuously?
Yeah, I do hear that a lot. Like, how long does it take to optimize my site? Right. That's that itself is a misconception, because there's no such thing as a fully optimized site. And I can prove it by doing a usability on your site, and we will see people struggle. And so, what I think people have in their mind is, I need to check the box. We've checked the box on SEO. We've checked the box on CRO. And so now our business is just good to go. In reality, customer expectations change over time. There's things that will change about your site that you may not have been there at the beginning. So like different marketing campaigns or offers, or just even your relative value propositions to your competitors. If you think about the web in the 90s versus the web in the 2000s versus now, like we've all evolved in what we expect from a website. So if you optimized a site 20 years ago, it's certainly not optimized today. And so, pushing the boundary on that a little more locally, there are just little changes in behaviors that matter, and we should be paying attention to it and seeing what our customers are expecting and needing from our experiences.
Yeah. And that leads us to, like, I think the big question, right? Like, what are these, let's dive in a little bit deeper. Like, what are these top 5, I would say, misconceptions and strategies that you can implement to actually get there, like get your benchmarks in the right direction?
Yeah. I almost, one of the things that I would think about is moving away from just A/B tests. When we talk about CRO, I think the biggest misconception overall is that a CRO program equals A/B tests.
Yep.
And really, it's not about those ideas. Like, it's a misconception that we're testing ideas. We should be testing solutions that are addressing real problems that exist. And so there are 5 ways that I would challenge anyone listening to think about how you even figure out what problems exist, because the A/B test won't tell you. The A/B test will tell you, did it work or not? Did your solution solve the problem or not? So the first thing is just like review the things your customers have already told you. So often we work with a client and they're not really paying attention to the chat channel and aggregate, or the things that are coming through customer service. Like, what kind of problems are people getting stuck or confused about? So take the stuff you already have and use that as a starting place to understand like where people are confused or where the experience is breaking down. The second one is then like taking intentional steps to talk to customers directly. So like doing that proactive qualitative research. So that could be, interviews, it could be surveys, but ways to just ask questions about, how well is this working for you? How well is it not working for you? How do we compare to other competitors? And that's going to start to like illustrate some areas that maybe your team hasn't thought about because you have blinders on because you're so close to it. The third area I would point people to is to then actually observe customers using the experience. So this often is under the umbrella of like a usability study, but even simply if you're just getting started with this, like watching someone who isn't you use your site makes you go, oh, how come they missed that? Or, I don't quite understand why they went down that particular path. So asking them to go through it, use the product, use the experience, and also to think aloud. Like, what are they thinking about, getting confused about? I think the fourth one, I would say most people haven't really thought about doing, and I can borrow from having come from the product development space, which is that we forget to talk to our competitors' clients or our competitors' visitors. So there's all kinds of ways to get access to folks who buy from your competitor and to learn like what they're doing well, what they're doing poorly. One of my favorite things to do is to run a usability study on competitor sites to see what their strengths are, and then having that same participant go through my client's site. So we can see like the compare and contrast of the experience overall. And then the last bucket I love to talk about is leveraging your own team for insights about your customer or about what messages resonate. one of my favorite things I've ever done with a client was we interviewed their frontline sales team. And they said, oh, we're really well connected. We talk to the sales managers all the time. And we said, just let us talk to a few of them. We'll talk to them about how that looks. And this was a software company in particular. And what we found was we could ask the sales team, we heard over and over, here's what I talk about the first moment, and here's what I talk about right before I close the deal. And we basically took that copy and content and made it like the landing page and then the action right next to the CTA, so that we had exactly the information that would cause someone to convert. So those are the 5 areas I feel like a lot of teams are forgetting to consider when they're thinking about their conversion rate optimization program.
Yeah. And I love the last one, by the way. And I think like that's something that we should definitely be doing ASAP. but as I'm looking at like each of these 5, things to definitely checklist to go through, what could be some of the tools, or processes that I need to follow across
all 5 of those?
Yeah.
I mean, a really thoughtful approach would be to create a research plan. So just like for an A/B test, you would define what it is you're going to test before you build it. Oftentimes teams are not doing that with research. So taking the time to plan before you have that conversation, whether it's with your sales team, with your customers, with people elsewhere, just knowing what you're looking for before you start to investigate will give you much clearer understanding of what's going on. I think really often there's a ton of data available in our world, in our digital world. And if you end up looking at a survey with 1 million responses, how do you even wade through it and figure out what's meaningful? Exactly. And so starting with the question, what are you trying to learn? And then figuring out the right strategy to find that answer.
Got it. And any kind of, for example, the third point that you mentioned, one part of it is, of course, like kind of looking at customers on the other side really with you. The other is that maybe implementing like a Hotjar or something like that on your side to kind of like get those videos to actually see their flows, right? So what could be some of these tools that you use every day and you suggest to our audience?
Yeah, I mean, I think you named a good fair bit of those. So the click tracking tools. Similarly, I would make a plan before taking a look at them. So what are you trying to learn from them? One of the examples I use is we had a test that didn't work in a checkout, and it only didn't work for a subset of users on mobile. And we couldn't quite figure out why it didn't work for that group. And so we isolated the videos and we only looked at checkout and only on that particular device. And we saw that the site was essentially creating like a UX bug where you couldn't click into something that seemed to be clickable. And that really explained why we were seeing a ton of drop off just at that one moment in our experience. So again, like Hotjar, Crazy Egg, Microsoft Clarity is another good free tool to get started with. Yeah. And then on the flip side, looking at tools for observation around somebody. Everybody's moving to remote research. So usertesting.com, I think, was there first, but Try My UI, user interviews. There's just a handful of places that will help connect you to the right people to do that observation with, and will give you a chance to like screen share and really see it.
Love that. Right. So a quick heads up to the audience, have any questions, please start, putting it on the chat over there. And then with AJ, let's move on to the Easter egg of the day, I guess. What we kind of literally put AJ on the hot seat and said, let's do a live teardown. So we are actually going to be doing that, guys, right now. And AJ, go ahead, let's share your screen and go through it.
All right. Well, I'm very excited. We've decided to take a look at Outdoor Voices. I'm also in Austin, Texas, where they're headquartered. So I mentioned I'd seen them at an event, but hadn't been on their site for a little while. So this is my first time looking at it in a little while. So this will be new to me just as much as the audience. And I do have both desktop and mobile pulled up here, but just for the sake of screen sharing, I think sticking with mobile or the desktop version is probably going to be a little easier for this. So, one of the things I like to do is think about who's going to be coming to the site, right? It may or may not be me, and probably isn't me in most cases. So, Outdoor Voices is a fitness company and they sell apparel. So thinking about somebody who's in that mindset of I do a specific thing, Selfishly today, I'm going to say I'm going to look at this as a pickleball player. For those who don't know, it's the fastest growing sport in America. I ran into Outdoor Voices at a pickleball tournament. So I will be keeping that in mind and kind of selfishly taking in myself as the user persona. So one of the things that, we want to do when we first visit a website is we want to know what the business is all about. So if I come across outdoorvoices.com, maybe a friend referred them or something else, I may not quite understand what it takes to means. Like it's kind of this playful copy, tops and bottoms does clarify it. But generally we find the more direct the hero copy is, the more clear that is for new visitors in particular. So that's something that immediately jumps out at me. I do love that they have like a really clear call to action and that the navigation is very clear in that top corner. And then kind of going through here, they've got some fun ways of kind of pairing the outfits together with some clear actions, which I do like this as a way to get visitors to actually look at the item if they're inspired. One of the big themes, of course, in CRO is social proof. And so seeing real people wearing the items and then being able to point to that's pretty huge.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the dresses are very trendy. So seeing the fitness dresses outlined draws my attention. One of the things I don't see on their site, I'm getting a weird bug here. You've seen that too?
I see that.
That's probably not something I'd test. I'd probably just fix it. I think it's something about my screen size being smaller. That would be my guess.
Could be.
Oh no,
wow.
it's just, that's super broken. Okay, I'll just skip through it. I won't scroll it. They have some really great, beautiful, big imagery, but some of this feels kind of difficult to use. So because I'm looking at the site, I can't even see the name of the product at the same time I'm looking at the image. And so I'm not sure if this is something I can buy or not. I'm not really sure. These big images are not working very well on my device.
Yeah.
And then I guess on that note, one of the things that we see be very successful is highlighting bestsellers very high up on the page. So if I were to work with these guys, one of the first tests I'd want to run with them is, does this need to be higher up on the page and potentially a little bit more condensed so people can see more at the same time and find something that piques their interest?
Totally agree. My standard response when going to a new brand is, I want to know what others are buying from you. That's like my first thing. Yeah.
Right. That's social proof. Like, does it work? Does it work for people like me and what I'm interested in? Mm-hmm. I do like their big color blocks. That's usually pretty helpful. Sizing, size guide. They've got some pretty good standard elements in here. What else I like about this is they're only presenting the essential information above the fold. And that call to action is really clear right here. They've got a quick ad. I'd be really curious to test this against an interstitial after I've picked out the product, because this potentially could distract me from what I'm currently considering.
Yeah.
And there's that social proof that you like. So let's just go ahead and add something to bag. And then it's just kind of quickly dropping me into the cart page. They're doing a pretty good job here of doing some upsells. Although I would want to test out, do these things really go with this dress or with somebody who wants to buy this dress? Because I'd imagine there's some other things that would be more applicable to me as I'm looking at this experience.
I totally am with you, AJ, because my first reaction was like, really, do I need that? I don't think with that dress, I would even think about that.
Yeah. And I'm not really sure. I think doing things is one of their product lines, I'd guess. And this doesn't, they're not the same color. I wouldn't wear a hat like this with this dress, I think. They do make it pretty easy here just to slide them back in. So the UI is pretty intuitive and a lot of the basic things, which is good to see. But there's some opportunities to just make it a little easier to do these upsells.
Yeah.
the free shipping. One of the things that feels to be missing across the whole experience is why outdoor voices. So I don't think I've seen anywhere across this experience, like what makes outdoor voices stand out against other competitors I might be considering. We do get some nice information about free shipping that nicely incentivizes what we're doing here. If I had something, I'm going to test this out. If I had something below 75, yeah, this is another opportunity for them.
Yeah.
We've seen that having those little sliders or things that say how far you are away from the free shipping really gets people thinking, oh, maybe I do need just a little bit more.
Yeah, because it's almost like a static. I have to remember that I'm eligible for free shipping. It's not really telling me anything.
That's right. Like it's just as similar as order summary. It doesn't draw my attention in, and I'm not sure how close I am. The other thing we've done some testing on, and this can be brand specific as to like which of these funnels they prefer to send people in. But we've seen that having these smaller CTAs kind of minimize how many people go down those paths, and they're often easier paths for people. So that would be another test I'd want to be considering for them is, can we make it easier for people to find the specific order path that's going to be smoothest and quickest for them?
Got it. You spoke about why outdoor voices, and if they watch us and they decide like, hey, we want to implement that, how can they do that in this flow that we just went through?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I like to think of it in terms of threes as a starting place. So like, what are the 3 reasons I would want outdoor voices versus another company? And it can be anything. It can be we're made in the USA, or we're the cheapest version of this that you can possibly find, or, we're trendsetters. So kind of depending on what it is, it could be the quality of material. It could be we're great for specific kinds of movement. So having things that, I started this by saying, I want to find something that works for me in pickleball. Yeah. I didn't come across anything where I was like very confident that it would work for that type of movement. Yeah. Definitely cute. I definitely get that it's athletic wear. Yeah. It has shorts, so probably works. But because fitness has so many different types of movements, I would want to be really confident that this would work for yoga, or this would work for rock climbing, or this would work for pickleball. And, these are quite kind of generic athletic clothing. And I would want to be able to just know a little bit more about who it's ideal for. So I don't have to look at everything, but find the right set.
I love that. I think that I always love teardowns, and I totally agree that it's a great looking site. It's stunning. It's got great pictures. It got all the basic, right? Basic flows, right? All the buttons are looking good and they work well. But there's this what's missing is this, I can't understand why you, and why should I buy you? That connect is missing somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah. And you asked a little bit about where you would place some of that information. And I would expect to see, often you see sort of like badges or things that reinforce the message. So you can introduce early, hey, here's what makes us stand out. We make top of the line quality gear. It's going to last for a lifetime, and it's made in the US. Like if those were the 3 things for them, then you could create some sort of visual cues that you keep nodding to across the experience. So sometimes that's highlighting it around this add to bag section or in the cart itself, so that you remember the reason that you're buying from this brand at each and every step across the journey. Yeah.
Super. This is so cool. Thank you so much, AJ, for walking us through a live teardown, and that too at the last minute. We are already over time, but we're going to keep you for a few minutes more because we've got audience questions and we can't let you go till you answer them. So I'm going to quickly go through a few of them. Questions from the live stream. First is from Tia. Do I need to invest in optimizing my checkout flows if I'm already using a standard Shopify stack?
That's a great question. It does matter. So we find that, the out of the box solution can get you a good starting place. Like that often is something that's recognizable and easy for visitors to respond to. But actually the example we just talked about is a good reason that you would want to personalize it. Because if your shipping policies are different, or if your value props are different, or the shipping threshold's different, you're going to want to present that in different ways. The other thing, which isn't exactly what she was asking, but the other thing that is very customer dependent, we see it different with each and every client, is what path to checkout makes sense. So for some sites, it's all about getting straight to checkout, making it really fast. And for others, because people are matching things, or there's some sort of like people are buying multiple products, we want to help point them back to those other paths. So it depends, and everything should be tested.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer. And Jake's asking the next question: is there an essential checklist to create a CRO plan for mid-sized store? He didn't mention which
essential checklist.
Essential checklist, but he didn't mention any industry though.
I will kind of do a little nod to our site. So we have a free checklist on our website, experimentzone.com, where we do have some checklists that are good starting places. And so some of the things that I'm like just mentally checking for in this walkthrough today, does it say what they do? Does it say who it's for? Do they say why you should do it? We've got that written out as a checklist. But at the end of the day, that checklist is only the starting place. And there's so much more that needs to be done beyond the checklist.
Yeah. And you got to reach out to AJ for that, Jake. The third question is from Stacy. What are the top elements I should be checking if I'm not getting a good conversion at checkout?
That's interesting. So I guess the question would be, if you're getting people into checkout, but they're not converting, we might want to understand why that's happening. I would probably start with some of those things we talked about at the beginning of our time today. So watching some click tracking videos to see, is there something that's getting in their way that you can tell just by observing? I would actually do a usability study on the checkout in particular to say, what kinds of things do people voice when they're experiencing the site for the first time? Because it could be value prop, it could be shipping threshold, it could be that one of the buttons doesn't work as expected on some devices.
Yeah, totally. Like the example you just spoke about, the mobile one. Ankit asked the final question: what can be some of the effective ways to increase AOV?
Yeah, actually, I think Outdoor Voices had some really nice examples. So sometimes you can, show things paired together on a product page. We found that upsell, like pop-ups, work pretty well. So after you go to add to bag, confirming, hey, we've added to bag, would you like one of these matching products? I think one of the important things that people sometimes forget is that the rule set of what products to show matters quite a bit. So we want the price point to make sense, and we want to make sure the products could go together with the same kind of person or their goals or things like that. So Outdoor Voices example today showed that hat, which didn't quite feel right to us. So thinking about, finding the right algorithms that will help surface things. One of my favorite ones is, people bought this, also bought this, because that you have the proven history that those things go hand in hand. So that's a good starting place.
Yeah. I love that answer because I think I'm a sucker, as I said, for social proof. And when I see that other folks actually bought something, I definitely want to check that out. Thank you so much, AJ. We do have we were like 10 minutes over time, but thank you so much for doing this. And thank you for being our final guest on Store Conversions on Steroids. But we also did the most fun thing, which is a live teardown. Excited to have you. Hope to bring you back again. Thank you, audience, for your questions. And that's a wrap. We will be sharing out summaries over next week, and we'll of course link out all the speakers that we spoke to, and AJ in specific. If our audience wants to reach out to you, which channel is the best way to do that?
Yeah, I mean, finding our website, experimentzone.com, is a great starting place. We have a really easy contact us form, and I'll definitely see that. But I also just love connecting to people. Find me on LinkedIn, AJ Davis. I love doing virtual coffees. I love helping people just getting started with CRO. So don't hesitate to reach out. I would love to talk to you about what you're thinking about.
Awesome. So please do that. And thank you. That's a wrap. Thanks for being here.